Well, folks, thanks for allowing me in to the data platform WIT Mental Health and Wellness Day. I'm Drew Skwiers-Kabolla. It is a difficult to pronounce name, so I've been working on a phonetic spelling of it. Let me know if that's helpful.
It
My
is very
pronouns,
helpful. I do really appreciate that. Thank you.
yes. My pronouns are he, him, and I have lived a really good life. I've had a lot of things going for me, and I've been able to leverage that to help me through a number of experiences and really kind of live a good life that I've enjoyed, and has frankly made it almost seem too easy in comparison to how some other people have dealt with anxiety, depression, transitioning, all kinds of things. So that is why I wanted to take a few of the somewhat lighthearted lessons that I've gone through, because I think that they're actually somewhat universal, whether or not they have to do with my transition. I hope that they help folks as they continue to evolve the perspective on their lives. The first one came from early in my childhood, and if you spend a lot of time with me now, you know that I am often going at like 100 miles an hour, and I'm like really into just doing things to their fullest as much as I can. And that also involves like being open with people and doing everything you can. But at the end of the day, you can get hurt doing this. Either you burn yourself out, or you're vulnerable to people you shouldn't be, and you're going to get hurt. And that's okay to a certain level, but you have to set those boundaries. And as a kid, my mom tried to teach me this because I was running around on playgrounds and I kept falling and splitting the bottom of my chin open. And it happened so many times. My parents were getting questions from social workers at the hospital, and I was like on the road to needing some pretty serious stitches. And so my mom literally had to tell me, if you fall and hit your chin again, I'm going to have to spank you. Like you have to figure out what your limit is on protecting yourself and setting those boundaries. If you want to take life by the horns, you need to also be aware of when you need to protect yourself, what boundaries you need to be able to set. Like that is absolutely non-negotiable. Next up is, I will say, is kind of a patented trans person survival technique. And part of being transgender is often a feeling of dysphoria, where your body does not match what you are feeling. And this can manifest into extreme emotions, including anxiety and depression. This can manifest into like a physical sensation in a lot of ways. But on the flip side of that, that survival technique is to try to pick out little things that make you feel good, something small that helps you out and gets you through the day. So this is not a day to talk about, solving medical problems and coming in with a golden ticket or a silver bullet. But I do encourage folks that as times are rough, it's okay to say, I have to pick something small to focus on right now that makes me feel good to get through this next step. So whether it's McDonald's and a picnic, or whether it's I feel good about myself when I'm writing documentation, or I feel good about myself when I am baking. We've been through a lot these last couple of years between COVID and politics around the world. So find ways to take care of yourselves, even in small ways. I talked earlier about kind of living life to the fullest and knowing when to set boundaries. And I want to address the flip side of this. And it's when you have boundaries, or when you are apprehensive to show someone who you really are, how do you know when is good to open this up? And this anecdote has a little bit of context around it, so bear with me. I am a trans male, so I lived over 2 decades as a female. And in undergraduate school, I was doing a bachelor's degree and still living as female. And I was a very butch out lesbian at the time. And a lot of things about my life just didn't seem to fit for me just right. I tried to be happy and was well loved, but there were just some things that didn't sit right. And not everyone in my life felt that in a supportive way. Some of my family members and then some of my former friends, they would find ways to either be derogatory around my butch appearance or not encouraging me to appreciate myself the way I was. And that was not an easy thing. But I also had a fantastic group of friends that continue to be friends that really showed me when it was worthwhile to let them know me to the fullest. I was doing a bachelor's degree in chemistry, and so we were going through some lessons on fundamental molecular and atomic orbitals. And as we went through kind of your basic sp and d orbitals, we got to the lesson on the d orbitals, and they looked at that orbital over there on the right, the dz squared orbital, and it's a little bit different than what you would kind of have expected going through the others. It's still a valid electron configuration, but it's just comes across a little different there. And at that moment, my friends realized that it made a lot more sense to call me DZ for DZ squared than to try to continue to fit Elizabeth onto me as my former name. And after asking me if that was okay to kind of adorn me with that nickname and start calling me DZ, I was good with that. I was ready to kind of shed that away. And that nickname lasted for years. I took it to grad school with me. It fit so much better. Like, people picked it up right away. And I carried DZ squared for a while. In fact, until it came time to pick out my new name. When I did legally transition, I had that kind of huge question of, like, how do you name yourself? That's a fun one. But in that, I knew that because I had someone look at me and say, we love you for who you are, and give me that I wanted to try to continue. And so I ended up trying to take the D and the Z and convert them into first and middle names. And that's how I came up with Drew Ezekiel as my new name. And so if you're wondering in a relationship if it's okay for someone to see you and see more of you, look at how they're responding. If they respond with love and kind of mirror back to you that, then you know that they are valuing you for you. Two more life lessons. This is where the title of the talk came from, and this is not an easy story, but it's probably one of the most important lessons I learned in my life. As a child, my family had a really nasty, manipulative divorce. I came out as a lesbian and lived butch in high school. There were a lot of these things that had a lot of kind of building dissonance. If you're watching a movie, you kind of see the things start falling apart until you eventually reach the climax. And mental health problems also abound in my family. So I kind of knew that I was destined for depression. And despite all of this, I was exposed to a number of therapists, whether it was during my parents' divorce or then in high school during my first round of very serious depression. And in all of those instances, it never felt like the therapist was there for me. It was there because my parents wanted to get something out of it, or because someone wanted something about me to change. And that wasn't a good therapy experience. Frankly, I survived high school depression. I survived and kind of rebounded and found myself new things to focus on as I got older. But I wasn't open to therapy. I wasn't open to a third party that would help me think about, learn how to verbalize the things that I was burying inside of me, or that were kind of an innate part of depression and the varied emotions that come with that. Unfortunately, during high school, with that round of therapy, I began to realize that no matter how much I became okay with living as a butch lesbian, I was not going to be comfortable in my body. But given the time and the age that we were living in then, it really didn't seem to me like a valid alternative to transition. Certainly not with the way my family had been responding, or kind of just in general, the available medical abilities. So I shut that down, like never even brought it to therapy, didn't bring it to anyone else, shut that down, locked it inside. Also not a great thing to do if you're suffering from depression. But when you do things like that, it builds and it doesn't go away. And when I was getting ready to go to graduate school, I was visiting a few places, and on my way to Minnesota, I had to fly from St. Louis to Minnesota. And on the plane, I was sitting next to someone, and we got to talking a little bit. And the way that they brought things out of me around my past experiences with family and how people responded to me in my presentation, just at being butch, I woke up to the idea that therapy could be helpful. They revealed to me kind of at that 30,000 feet that they were a therapist, and that some of these things that I've gone through were really tough. And despite that I was handling them well, it would be a good idea for me to continue beyond just this plane ride with making sure that I stayed healthy. I felt a lot better about therapists, but I didn't do anything about it. Unfortunately, it took until 6 months later at graduate school, I hit another round of really serious, debilitating, dangerous depression. And it became an emergency. It became that 30,000 feet level emergency where I had to accept that I needed help and that I needed to be open to working with a therapist to get through it. So had it not been for the original 30,000 feet conversation, I don't know if I would have been ready. And so I always encourage people to think about therapy should not be the last minute emergency thing that you do. It can be really, truly helpful. And if you need to save your life. So I want to wrap things up with something that is important for me to recognize around people's lives are a continuum. You may have worked on help desk, you may have worked at a pizza buffet, you might have been in marching band, you may have all these things that make you you, both from the past, both from who you are now, and where you're going in the future. But having shame or guilt about that and carrying that with you can be something that destroys you from the inside. It's okay. We've already talked about it. It's okay not to show everyone everything about you all the time. It's okay to have boundaries. It's good to have boundaries. It's good to find people that you can show who you are, but don't carry shame or guilt about who you are, who you want to be, who you have been, because that can be really, really dangerous. That was part of what really made some of my depressive episodes so dangerous, was I had that shame, that guilt. And so making sure that you recognize your whole person can really kind of keep that load lighter and help you stay healthier. Thank you.
Thanks so much. That was awesome.
I couldn't see the chat. Did we have any questions? Okay.
Can't see any questions, Drew. Thank you, though. That was such an honest, moving little presentation.
I would totally agree with your title session, the 30,000 feet. I mean, once you've gotten into crisis mode, it's really hard to feel like there's a path forward. And the sooner that you can recognize that there's an issue or a problem and get some help, that the better I think it is, just in the long run. I mean, it's you wouldn't let some weird physical thing, you wouldn't sit there and look at that lump on your arm for like a year and go, why is that getting bigger and bigger, and not do anything about it.
Yeah.
Our mental health is the same thing. We have to be able to recognize when something's not right and take action.
So Erin has some really nice comments for you, Drew, if you can see the chat window.
Thanks, Erin.
Actually, everybody says thanks. A lot of great comments.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think what you said about being your real self in front of people is, it's very hard to find that group of people that are going to love you no matter what. And you're lucky when you find those people.
Yep. And we all deserve that for all aspects of our life. Love is a very strong word, but even in the professional sense, we're all giving significant portions of our time to our workplaces and to our volunteering. And to know you get that kind of support for what you do there is important.